I think we all hit that point where you're just like tired of reading the same thing. As you guys may or may not know, I basically spent all of 2025 trying to read books that were outside my comfort zone. For context, my comfort zone has always been romance and would maybe have like an occasional fantasy and romantasy in there. I really sort of stuck to those two genres. When I was doing my end of year like reading wrap up in 2024, I realised that there weren't very many books at all that like stood out to me because I felt like I was just reading so much of the same, and that is why I changed that in 2025. I had the best reading year in 2025, but what actually happened on the back of it and in the first couple of months of 2026, I think my taste in books is changing, which is so fun, and it's just nice to like open up a new world of reading that you didn't have for yourself before. I have really discovered some new absolute favourite books ever that I am so excited to talk to you guys about today. This is not me telling you need to read outside your comfort zone. I really think reading inside your comfort zone is a great thing, and I love going back to my romance books, but I think we all hit that point where you're just like tired of reading the same thing. And honestly, I found that reading outside my comfort zone has severely reduced the amount of book slumps I've had. Like, I genuinely don't think I had a single book slump in 2025 because I was constantly mixing things up. I did not find myself getting bored of reading, and I want that for you guys as well. So I thought I'd tell you about some recent books that I have loved. I'm going to tell you the sort of new genres that I'm getting into with some book recommendations, and I would love to know if you guys have any other book recommendations that you can give to me, because I'm loving being on this journey of reading different genres and like enjoying those genres. So please let me know if you have any other book recommendations that you think I would enjoy this year. Let's just get into it. First genre we're going to talk about is a genre that I feel like I have always known that I enjoyed, but I've only really started making the effort to pick up more books like this, and that is historical fiction. I don't think I've read a book in this genre that I've not enjoyed so far, which is a crazy statement, but it's true. I really just love the storytelling element of a historical fiction, and I love that I always walk away from it feeling like I've learned so much. And I'm always going into knowing that, you know, the book is most likely not 1000% accurate, but it really does give you a picture of what it was like to live in whatever time period or historical event that we're talking about. And the most important thing above anything is I feel like historical fiction gives you so much empathy. I think genuinely in the times we are living in, historical fiction is so important to read because it can help you spot the patterns of why things are going the way they are now. It really puts yourself in people's shoes. It gives you empathy. It helps you understand why things unfolded the way they did. Different historical events, they don't just happen overnight. It takes years and years and years of build up and loads of factors to get to that point, which I think is just so interesting. And it's like, even though you're reading about the past, it actually always helps you understand what's going on right now so much better. So I love that. I really do enjoy a historical fiction book. So I'm going to tell you about some recent favourites. My most recent favourite is without a doubt The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. Now, Kristen Hanna, she is a historical fiction queen. Her most well-known historical fiction is of course The Nightingale. I would 1000% recommend that, but that's not the book I'm about to talk about. But my most recent book that I've read by her that I seriously have not stopped thinking about since I read it, and I think is without a doubt my favourite book of her that I've read so far, that is The Four Winds. We are following a girl who's grown up in Texas in the 1930s. She is living in the midst of the Great Depression. She is born into this quite wealthy Texas family, but she is like the outcast of the family purely for the simple fact that she is not a conventionally attractive person, which is honestly, I've never read anything like that before, like that exact circumstance, and it was so heartbreaking to read. It was just in these times, women's only purpose was to get married, and so when her family think she's not attractive enough for anyone to marry her, they just count her out. She does actually end up in a marriage and having a child, and then we follow the story from her perspective and her daughters. There is a really severe, terrible drought in Texas to the point where they need to get up and flee to California. One of the biggest like sort of topics of the book is the relationships between mothers and daughters. Elsa is this very reserved, quiet person, I think because she's just been told you are not attractive. She just wants a simple life. She just wants to feel like she belongs somewhere. She just wants to keep her head down, work hard. Her daughter, Loreda, on the other hand, she's a very fiery, passionate person, and she resents her mum for not being like that. that as well. And you just kind of watch this complicated relationship between them develop. It's also just about the resilience of women. The things Elsa goes through and the things she overcomes. The person we know Elsa to be from the start of the story versus to the end of the story was the most amazing character development, and I loved it so much. Female friendships was a huge thing in this as well. There was just so much I got from it. There were so many quotes in this book that I could not stop highlighting because they were genuinely all the most beautiful, wonderful quotes. I feel as though Kristen Hanna has such a knack for putting emotions that you have but can't quite put into words onto paper. Like, she does that so well. It was just an amazing book. That entire topic of that like historical event was something I knew nothing about, and I feel like I understand it so much better from reading that book. But I mean, if you just want to get into historical fiction in general, Kristen Hanna is such an amazing place to start. All of her books are so amazing, and I cannot wait to keep reading them because they are so good. Another recent historical fiction that I absolutely loved is The Seastone Sisters. This is historical fiction, but also like flash forwards to present day as well. We're following characters in the present and also in the past, and it's also very Scotland based, which I absolutely loved about this. It starts where we're hearing this legend of this father. His 4 daughters have been abducted from their home in Scotland. They live at the sea, and so he puts 4 stones up in the sea so that his daughters can find their way home. He puts a curse on the stones that if anyone ever lays the stones down, their entire family will be ruined. We then flash forward to the 1930s. This is a father who does put the stones down, and his family is cursed from that. They have a lot of problems. He also has 4 daughters, and those 4 daughters kind of have to leave the home one by one. Their father is gambling and drinking, and they need to find a way to make money for themselves. So we're following this from the perspective of the oldest sister, Iris, and she is going to Sri Lanka, Ceylon at the time, to try and find their uncle because he promised their mum this money. So we follow her journey, the people she meets along the way. There's a bit of a romance in there as well, which I really enjoyed. We are also following in present day someone who is clearly a descendant of these sisters, but we kind of can't tell like what the connection is because she's from Australia. She sees a painting of these 4 stones in Scotland, and she just feels this inexplicable connection to the painting. So she actually ends up going to Scotland to try and uncover what is the story behind this painting, what connection do I have to this painting, because she kind of becomes quite obsessed with it. And we just see how all these characters connect together. We find out what happened. I absolutely loved the sister element of it. You don't get to see as much of the sisters, but just knowing their relationship and knowing how Iris would have done anything for her sisters, I loved that about it. The writing was so fast paced and immersive. I really felt like I knew our main characters so well, and I loved following along everything with them. Whenever they were in Scotland, I could picture myself being in Scotland. When they were in Sri Lanka, I could picture that. The writing just told the story so well, and I really enjoyed it. It's a much newer book, so I don't know if you guys will have heard of this one before, so hopefully this is a good little underrated one that you guys can get into. The next genre we're going to be talking about is sci-fi. What I have recently realised is that I am much more of a sci-fi girl than a fantasy girl. I was a NASA child when I was younger. I literally used to write letters to NASA. I wanted to be an astrophysicist. I was obsessed with all things space and science. It kind of makes sense that this is like the pipeline. Now, I absolutely love science fiction books, but I've not read loads of them. I'm just going to tell you what I've read. The series that got me into science fiction and made me realise, oh, this is actually much more my vibe than fantasy, was the Red Rising series. If you follow me on TikTok, you will know this is honestly one of my favourite series of all time. I will preface this by saying I did not read the entire series. I stopped after the 4th book. To me, the first 3 books are the only books that matters, as I didn't love getting into sort of the second half of the series. The first 3 books do tell a complete story in my mind, and I like just keeping it like that. So when I say it's my favourite series of all time, I mean that first sort of like trilogy is basically set in this society where we are no longer just living on Earth. We are living on all the planets, and society has been split into colours, and it's like a hierarchy of colours. The golds are the gods of society, they are the elites, and then we have the reds, who are literally the bottom tier. And our main character, Darrow, he is a red. He is kind of used to this life and doesn't really have any sort of questions or, you know, wants to get out of this. He's kind of content where he is, but something really traumatic happens to him. It completely changes his perspective on life. He joins a rebel movement. They basically reconstruct Darrow into a gold so that he can infiltrate the gold society with the goal of taking them down. It is by far the most well-written, amazing, like epic story I have ever read. Literally from the first book to the third book, I was obsessed. The third book truly is one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. Like top 5 best books I have ever read. And yeah, that was kind of what introduced me to science fiction. So even though I did read that like 1 or 2 years ago now, I feel like I had to recommend it because it's just so good. The more recent books I've absolutely loved. The first one I'm going to talk about is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. Dark Matter basically follows a man who is making dinner on a Thursday night with his wife and children. He is extremely happy in his life. His only kind of question he has is, what would have happened if I never gave up my career to be a parent? He used to be this very accomplished scientist and researcher, but he gave that up to have kids. Long story short, he wakes up in a completely alternate universe where he never gave up his job, he never had a son, and his wife isn't his wife. We basically follow him try to make his way back to his real life. What this book talks about is the multiverse theory, so the idea that there are infinite other universes out there where you made either completely different choices or just slightly different choices, but it's made you have a completely different life. It was so trippy to read that book. Like, it genuinely had my head spinning because it's such a crazy thing to imagine, but it also kind of makes sense. And to me, I found the idea kind of comforting. Like, if you've ever seen the Sylvia Plath fig tree quote, there are so many lives out there that you could take and so many paths you could take, but you can never have them all. The idea of the multiverse I actually really enjoy because it comforts me that like in other universes I am doing all those things. It was such an interesting, fun, fast-paced read. This was a 5-star for me. It kind of had a bit of a mix of like science fiction and thriller, which I really enjoyed about it as well. The next book I absolutely loved recently was The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. This is like no science fiction book I have read before. We are basically following this spaceship. It is very character driven, like there is a plot to it, but it is more sort of character driven. Everyone on that crew is completely different, and by completely different I mean different species. This is not humans, these are all alien people, and then I think we have one human on, but the rest are all like completely different species and aliens. Just about how different they all are and how they live together and the relationships they have together, the way they overcome issues, you cannot help but just become so attached and just adore every single character on that ship. And I think that's what I loved about it. I don't really think you get science fiction books like that, and that's what that really was for me. It was a character driven science fiction book, and it really just made me feel like warm and fuzzy inside. The last science fiction book I'm going to talk about is, of course, Project Hail Mary. I finally read Project Hail Mary last year and absolutely loved it. Definitely get the hype, and I want to recommend it again because I know the movie's out in cinema now and the movie was absolutely phenomenal. I will say, if you can get the book read before you go see the movie, definitely do, because I think it adds so much to your enjoyment of the movie. Project Hail Mary follows Dr. Grace, who wakes up in this spaceship that is lost in space, and he cannot remember why he is there. All of his crew are dead. In his sort of quest to figure all this out, he actually bumps into another spaceship, and it's an alien spaceship, and this is where we meet Rocky. Rocky is an alien. We basically watch their friendship develop and watch how they both help each other try and get back to their planet. This book to me is the perfect balance of having the most interesting, incredible plot that genuinely feels like you are watching like a cinematic masterpiece, like you have that picture in your head the entire time, but at the same time the characters are so lovable. The friendship between Dr. Grace and Rocky was so genuinely heartwarming. I feel like the entire point of the book and the message of the book was like, as humans we just want connection, and especially the fact this little alien who is like not a human being, that's also all he wants as well. Like literally living beings, like that is literally all we want, is connection with other living beings. That just warmed my heart, and it was just such a great, funny, interesting book, and it's another book that really made me love science fiction so much more. The last genre we are going to talk about, I'm going to be honest, I do not know what to call this. These books gave me the same vibe though, so I'm putting them in the same category. I think this might just be contemporary fiction. I guess the thing I could say about all these books that they have in common, it's just contemporary fiction books that give you a better understanding of yourself, of other people, of life. I don't really know what to call them, but these are the types of books I'm realising that I really love and I'm gravitating towards. The first book is going to be my most recent 5-star read that I literally just finished yesterday. I have never read a book that I did not want to end more, and this is Hello Beautiful. Where do I even start with this? Okay, we basically meet 4 sisters. These 4 sisters are incredibly different but incredibly close. They always compare themselves to the March sisters of Little Women, and they kind of see themselves in different characters. Their family is quite dysfunctional. They have really dysfunctional parents, but they are still so close to one another, and you get that picture, like they would do anything for each other. But we actually only follow it from the perspective of the 2 oldest sisters, Julia and Sylvie. We also meet William. He has had quite a lonely childhood. His parents are pretty absent. His one love is basketball. That's the one place he really feels himself. When he's in either high school or college, I believe, he meets Julia, and Julia is the oldest sister of the family. She really is, your classic older sister. She's got her head screwed on. She has a plan for her life. She is very set. And when she meets William, and William just comes off like this stable, reliable person, they just gravitate towards each other, and they both kind of see the things that they've been missing in the other person. They get married very young and very quickly, but into their marriage, when it comes to having kids and stuff, they realize like they actually never knew each other, and they don't really know each other. They don't actually have any sort of emotional connection to each other outside what they can get from each other. Then, like I said, we follow it from Sylvie's perspective. Sylvie is very different from Julia. She kind of has a much more romantic picture of life. She's very introspective. Basically, when things start going wrong with Julia and William, Sylvie just happens to be there. Even me describing that, I don't know, that might put people off, being like, is there going to be like a cheating trope in this? It's really not like that, and I think when you read the story, you understand every character so much. That's all I can say about it, is I truly connected to every single character in a different way. Those 3 characters that we are following this book from, we could all not be more different, and yet I understood every single one of them so well and loved every single one of them. It's just one of those books about like human connection and family and found family, and just like the way we all look after each other. Guys, I loved it. I loved every single second of that book. I cannot recommend it enough. I was in no rush to finish it. I wish it could have just kept going and kept going and kept going, because the writing was so beautiful, and it was a wonderful book, and I cannot recommend it enough. The next book we need to talk about is The Correspondent. I have recommended this plenty of times on here, and I will keep recommending it because it is such a wonderful little book as well. We are following Sybil, and Sybil writes letters to everyone, and actually the entire story is told just through letters and emails. She writes to everyone, her friends, her family, lecturers at universities, authors she loves, customer service reps, and we see all their correspondences. It kind of takes place over a decade of her life, and it really tells the story of like who she is as a person. Throughout this time period as well, she's actually going blind, and so with this happening, she is kind of reflecting on her life. You really see her throughout these letters change and grow as a person, and kind of address things she's never addressed before: grief, regret. It really addresses fears I think we all have about our own lives and about who we are as people and things that could happen and loss. And that's what I loved about it. It was such a human book. Like, Sybil felt like a real person to me. It really changed my perspective on so many things. There were so many quotes I was highlighting. The book made me laugh. It made me cry. It was just a wonderful book. And I think for a book that's a lot smaller like that, to pack such a punch is really like tells you how great a book it is. And the last book I'm going to talk about is Theo of Golden. We are following this man, Theo, who has just moved to Golden, Georgia. He's a very personable, charming old man. One day he is in this coffee shop, and within the coffee shop there's loads of paintings, and the paintings are of other people within the town. He is genuinely so moved and taken aback by these paintings. He is like, why are people not buying these? Because they are for sale and for a reasonable price. He basically goes on this mission to track down every single person in these paintings to gift them the painting. The book is kind of just like a little collection of stories of him meeting these different people, giving them the pictures. You kind of get to learn a little bit about these people, their stories, how each of them kind of needed this interaction with Theo in different ways. When you're reading the book, it definitely feels like that, just sort of like a series of interactions, and it's all about like treating people with kindness and stuff. But actually at the end, you kind of learn who Theo is. Throughout the story, you can kind of tell he's very evasive about who he is and, you know, his background. When you learn sort of the full picture at the end of the story, it just makes it so much better, and you realize how many sort of details you missed about things. Like I said, I love books about this, about like how we all just want human connection and all these things. There are a couple of like religious elements to the book. When I was reading it, I remember reading it and being like, have I accidentally picked up a book that is quite religious and I'm sort of not the demographic for it? There definitely are religious influences. Like Theo will kind of quote a lot of stuff. However, as someone who's not religious, I still feel like I got so much out of this book, and it shouldn't like put you off. To me, the message of the book was more just about like how we treat each other, human connection, all these things. It was just such a lovely, heartwarming, uplifting book. I actually really enjoyed the audiobook of this as well, because you got to hear all the different characters' voices. I feel like it just played it out so well. So I would definitely recommend listening to this as well as reading it. But there you have it, guys. Those are just a few of my most favourite books that I've recently read outside my comfort zone. Honestly, I feel like every book I've read outside my comfort zone, 9 times out of 10, I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I actually think it's changed my taste in books. I feel like I'm gravitating towards these types of books more and more and more, because I'm just enjoying it so much. It's really keeping reading so interesting and fun for me. Please let me know if you read any of these books. Like I said, please let me know if you have any other recommendations like this, so I can keep growing my TBR. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you next week for another video. Bye!